A waiter at one of the finest restaurants in Napa Valley walks up to a corner table where a man in a dark flannel shirt and worn jeans is studying the wine list, and tells him, with the specific confidence of someone who has made this judgment before and has never been wrong about it, that some of the selections are perhaps more suited to guests with a particular background in wine. Not because the man asked, not because there was any indication he was struggling, because the waiter looked at the flannel shirt, the jeans, the single glass of water untouched on the table, and he made a decision. The Pellerin Pinot, for example, the waiter says, tapping the page. It's $400 a bottle. It has a very specific profile. Most guests find it. A small pause, the kind that carries more weight than the sentence, not for everyone. The man with the wine list looks up. He looks at the waiter. He looks at the Pellerin Pinot on the page. $400. Harvest 2019. Estate bottled. He says quietly, I'll start with a glass of that. The waiter's expression does not change. Not exactly, but something in it shifts, the particular micro-adjustment of a person who has been agreed with in a way that is also a refusal to be managed. Of course, the waiter says, I'll let you know if we have it open. He goes to the kitchen. He comes back 4 minutes later. Unfortunately, he says, the Pellerin is only available by the bottle this evening. The man looks at him. Then, I'll take the bottle, he says. The waiter says nothing for a moment. It's $400, he says. The man closes the wine list. He sets it on the table. He says, I know. What happened next? In the following 2 hours, in the dining room of a restaurant called Vellum on Silverado Trail in Napa Valley, California, was the kind of evening that the 16 people who witnessed it would tell, in different versions, for a long time. Most of those versions would begin the same way, with a bottle of Pellerin Pinot on the table of the man who grew it. There is a restaurant on Silverado Trail in the Napa Valley called Vellum. It opened 6 years ago in a building that was previously a tasting room, and the conversion was careful. What remained of the original space, the stone walls, the narrow windows that faced west and collected the last hour of afternoon light, was kept. And what was added was kept in conversation with it, so that the dining room felt like a place that had always been used for serious eating, rather than a place that had decided recently to become one. Vellum held 42 seats. Reservations were required. The tasting menu, 7 courses, ran $285 per person without wine. The wine program was what distinguished it from every other serious restaurant in the valley, not because the list was the longest, but because the sommelier, a woman named Claudette Ferraro, had spent 14 years building relationships with the small producers that larger restaurants overlooked. And the result was a list that read, to people who knew how to read it, like a map of the valley's best-kept secrets. The Pellerin Pinot was one of hers. Pellerin Vineyard sat on 9 acres in the Coombsville appellation, southeast of the city of Napa, on land that had been planted in Pinot Noir 15 years ago, and that had, in the last 5 years, begun producing fruit of a quality that drew attention from the people whose attention was worth drawing. Claudette had put the 2019 vintage on the list the previous fall. It was, she had told the restaurant's owner, the best Coombsville Pinot she had encountered in a decade. The name on the label was not one that most people connected to anything outside of wine. It was not, for instance, a name most people would connect to a man in a flannel shirt sitting at a corner table on a Thursday evening in September. The man who arrived at Vellum at 7:30 drove himself in a dark pickup truck that he parked in the lot without a valet. He wore a dark flannel shirt, soft from use, and jeans that had earned their worn patches honestly. He carried nothing. He came through the front door alone and told the host his name, and was shown to table 11, the corner table by the west window, which was the table that caught the last of the evening light, and was therefore the table Claudette Ferraro always asked for when she dined in other people's restaurants. Because light matters to wine, the way silence matters to music. He had been at Pellerin Vineyard since 7 in the morning. Harvest week. He had driven straight to Vellum because he had made the reservation 3 weeks ago and was not going to miss it, and because Claudette Ferraro had texted him that afternoon that the kitchen had something worth eating, which was the kind of text that did not require explanation between people who had known each other for 6 years. He was tired. His hands showed it. He had washed them at the vineyard and then again in the restaurant's bathroom, and there was still, in the crease of his left thumb, a faint trace of the particular purple-brown that comes from a day in the vines during harvest, which you cannot fully wash out no matter how carefully you try, and which anyone who has spent time in a winery would recognize immediately for what it was. The waiter at table 11 did not spend time in wineries. His name was Olivier Tessier, and he had waited tables at Vellum for 3 years, which made him, among the current floor staff, the most experienced server on the team. He was 31 years old. He was French by ancestry, second generation, and had grown up in Marin County with a father who was a structural engineer and a mother who taught piano, and who had between them produced a household in which the arts, including the art of eating and drinking, were taken seriously enough that Olivier had grown up with specific opinions about wine before he had any real knowledge to support them. He had come to hospitality through a back door, a semester off from a literature degree at Berkeley, a job at a wine bar in Hayes Valley to pay rent, a discovery that he was good at this in a way that lit something in him that the literature degree had not. He had educated himself seriously over the following 8 years. He held a set Level 3 certificate. He had done 2 harvests in Burgundy. He had opinions about Coombsville Pinot that were not wrong. He understood the appellation. He could discuss its volcanic soils and its tendency toward lower alcohol and higher acidity, and the specific way that the fog from the bay modulated the growing season. And he had applied that knowledge to the list at Vellum in a way that Claudette Ferraro, who supervised the floor team's wine education, considered genuinely good. What Olivier Tessier had also developed in 3 years of working a room where the clientele ranged from the well-dressed and knowledgeable to the well-dressed and performatively knowledgeable to the occasional guest who arrived looking like neither and turned out to be one of the valley's most celebrated winemakers in harvest. Clothes was a shorthand. The shorthand had nothing to do with knowledge. It had to do with clothes and ease and the particular way a person held a wine list before they opened it. Olivia had learned to read that shorthand in 2 seconds. He had been right about it often enough that he had stopped examining when he was wrong. The man at table 11 held the wine list the way you hold something you are familiar with, not studying it exactly, but visiting it. He had opened it to the wine section and not to the cocktail list, which told Olivier something. He had gone directly to the Burgundy and Pinot Noir section, which told him something else. But the flannel shirt and the tired jeans and the hands, Olivier had not looked at the hands long enough, had told him a third thing that overrode the first 2. He walked to table 11. He said what he said. The man ordered the bottle. Olivier went to the kitchen and stood at the service station for a moment, processing. He told himself the man would see the bottle open and reconsider. Some did. He came back. The man said he knew what it cost. The man said he would take it. Olivier went to find Claudette. Claudette Ferraro was in the wine cellar when Olivier came down the stairs. She was pulling a 2018 Chardonnay for table 6 and did not look up immediately. "I need the Pellerin 2019, Olivier said. She looked up. "Table 11, he said. He ordered it, by the bottle. She looked at him for a moment. "Table 11, she said. "Corner? West window?" "Yes." She went back to the Chardonnay. She pulled it and set it on the rack, and then she reached for the Pellerin and looked at the label for a moment, in the way she sometimes looked at bottles she was about to open, which was the way a person looks at something they are slightly protective of. "Did you talk to him about it?" she said. "I mentioned the price." She looked at him. "That's not what I asked." Olivier said nothing. "Did you talk to him about the wine?" she said. "I said it had a specific profile." Claudette was quiet for a moment. "What's he drinking with it?" "The 7-course. She looked at the label again. "That's a good pairing," she said. She took the bottle upstairs. She found table 11 herself. She set the bottle on the table. She said, "Mr. Reeves, I'm Claudette Ferraro. I put together the wine list here. I'm very glad you ordered this one." He looked at her. Then he looked at the label. Then he said, with the slightly crooked smile that was the real one, unhurried, "I thought you might be." She said, "When did you bottle the 19? "October of that year," he said. "Late harvest. We got lucky with the weather." "You got more than lucky," she said. "I've been trying to get people to order this for 8 months. How many bottles have you sold?" "Tonight makes 4, she said. "All to people who knew what they were ordering." She looked briefly at Olivier, who was standing at the service station at the edge of the room with the particular stillness of a person who has understood, in the last 90 seconds, something significant about the last 20 minutes. She did not say anything to him in that moment. She opened the bottle. She poured a small measure for the man at table 11 to taste. He held it. He looked at the color, which was the pale garnet of a young Coombsville Pinot, clear and bright in the evening light from the west window. He put his nose to it. He held it there for a moment longer than most guests held it. He tasted. He set the glass down. "The 2020 is going to be better," he said. "I know," she said. "I already asked for an allocation." He smiled. She poured his glass and left the table. She went to find Olivier. She found him at the service station. She said, quietly, "Come with me." She walked him to the small office at the back of the kitchen, which was not her office, but which had a door that closed. She closed it. She told him what the label said, and what the name on the label connected to, and what she had just been told about the October 2019 harvest. Olivier was quiet for a moment. "I told him the wine might not be for everyone," he said. "I know. I told him I wasn't sure if we had it open. I know that too." He was quiet again. "The hands," he said. "I should have." "It wasn't the hands," Claudette said. "You didn't look at the hands. You looked at the shirt." He did not argue with this because it was correct. "What do I do?" he said. "You go back out there," she said. "You do the job you actually know how to do. And when the evening is over, you apologize." "He may not want, that's not the point," she said. "The point is that you say it." He looked at her. "Not to protect yourself," she said, "because it's what the job requires. Because someone sat down at your table tonight and you told him a wine was not for everyone. And then it turned out to be his wine, and the only version of this evening that means anything is the version where you say so." Olivier was quiet. "Okay," he said. He went back out. He was a different waiter for the rest of the meal. Not dramatically different. The service at Vellum was precise, and Olivier was good at it, and the precision was visible in everything he did for the next 90 minutes. But underneath the precision was something that had not been there before. A quality of genuine attention. The kind that comes from understanding that the person in front of you has something to teach you, and that you have been, for the first 20 minutes of the evening, too certain of what you already knew to learn it. He poured the wine correctly. He timed the courses correctly. He described the third course, a preparation of duck with pickled blackberry and a sauce of reduced Pinot that the kitchen had been developing for 3 weeks, with the specificity and care that Vellum's training required, and that he was, when he was not operating from shorthand, entirely capable of. The man at table 11 ate and drank with the attention of someone who was doing nothing else. He was still there at 10:15, the last guest in the room, with the Pellerin nearly finished and the dessert course cleared, and a cup of coffee he had not asked for, but that the kitchen had sent anyway, because it was the kind of kitchen that paid attention. Olivier came to the table. He said, "Mr. Reeves, I want to apologize." The man looked at him. "What I said about the wine," Olivier said, "and what I said about having it open. Both of those things came from a judgment I made before I asked you a single question, and I should have asked before I made the judgment." The man said nothing for a moment. Then he said, "How long have you been working with wine?" 8 years, Olivier said. "What do you know about Coombsville?" Olivier told him. He told him about the volcanic soils and the marine influence, and the way the fog moved through the Appalachian in August and what it did to the ripening curve. He told him about the 2018 and the 2019, and why the 2 years had produced such different wines from the same ground. He was specific, and he was accurate. And the man at table 11 listened to all of it. When Olivier finished, the man said, "That's the right answer. I didn't give it at the beginning of the evening." "No, I should have." "Yes," he said. "But you gave it now." He said it the way he said things that were simply true, without particular weight on them, because the weight was already there. He looked at the empty bottle. "The 2020, he said. "If Claudette's getting an allocation, make sure you know it before it arrives." "I will," Olivier said. He smiled. "The real one." "Good," he said. He paid the bill in full. He tipped 40%, which was the most generous tip Vellum's staff had recorded in its 6-year history, which the server who tallied it the following morning mentioned to Claudette, who said nothing about it and went to check on the wine cellar. He left through the front door into the Napa night, which in September smells like earth and wood smoke and the particular sweetness of fruit at the end of its season on the vine. Olivier Tessier left Vellum 14 months later. Not because of the evening at table 11, the management at Vellum had not been told the story, and Olivier had not told them, and Claudette had not told anyone, which was her practice with the things she observed in the room that were between the parties who had been present. He left because he had been offered a position as head sommelier at a restaurant in Sonoma called Calder, which had 40 seats and a wine program that its owners had described in the job listing as built for people who take wine personally. He had read that phrase 3 times and applied the next morning. He took the position. The first month was hard in the way that first months are hard when you are responsible for a program rather than executing someone else's. He had opinions he now had to defend to a chef and an owner, which was different from having opinions that existed only in service of a more experienced person's list. He made 2 selections in his first season that did not perform the way he had expected. He made 6 that did. He learned, over the course of that first year, the specific difference between confidence that comes from knowledge and confidence that comes from having looked at a guest and already decided what they know, and he spent a great deal of the year running those 2 things against each other. His chef told a wine journalist who profiled Calder in its 2nd year, the best he had ever worked with at reading a table. Not in the shorthand sense, the 2-second visual assessment, but in the actual sense, the willingness to be in the room with a guest long enough to understand what they knew and what they wanted to know and what they had come to find. He asked questions. The journalist noted that other sommeliers in the valley did not ask. Not about budget or preference, the standard questions. Questions about the last wine they had loved and why. About what they were eating that week before they came here. About whether they wanted to be surprised or confirmed. Olivier did not tell the journalist what had changed, or when, or over a bottle of what. He did not tell anyone what had changed. What he did, every time he took a new server through their first week on the floor at Calder, was walk them to the wine list and say the same thing. Before you make a judgment about a guest's relationship to what's on this list, ask one question. What are you in the mood for tonight? 3 words. You'll learn more from the answer than from anything you can see from across the room. He paused every time after he said it. He let it sit. Then he said, and if they pick something you didn't expect, pay attention to why. Because the thing you didn't expect is almost always the thing that teaches you something. He did not tell them where that came from. He figured they would find out for themselves, one way or another. The ones who paid attention always did. Claudette Ferraro added the Pellerin 2020 to the wine list the following spring. She called it, in the tasting notes she wrote for the list, the best Coombsville Pinot I have encountered in 15 years of looking. She did not explain the escalation from the previous year's description, which had said a decade. Wine people who noticed the change assumed she had found something that reset the bar. She had. She sold all 12 bottles of the 2020 allocation in 6 weeks, which was a record for a single Pinot Noir on the Vellum list. The 12th bottle was purchased by a couple from San Francisco who had come to the Valley for their 31st anniversary and who had asked the sommelier, Claudette herself, on that particular evening, to choose something they would not forget. She chose the Pellerin. She told them a little about the vineyard. Not everything. The appellation, the soils, the harvest weather. She told them the 2020 was a particular year. The woman at the table asked why. Claudette said, because the person who made it was paying attention. The woman said that was a good reason. Claudette said it was the only reason that mattered. There is a version of this story that is about humiliation. The waiter who says the wrong thing and is publicly exposed and has to face the room with what he has done. I understand why that version is satisfying. It has a clean shape. The wrongdoer is corrected in proportion to the wrong. But the version I keep coming back to is quieter than that. It is Olivier at the service station, having just understood something, going back out to the room. It is the 90 minutes of service that followed, precise, attentive, without fanfare, the job done the way the job was supposed to be done, which was its own form of apology before the words arrived. And it is the apology itself, which was not required and was not witnessed by anyone except the man at the table and the room that was no longer watching. Olivier said it because it was what the situation required, not because anyone was keeping score. I find myself thinking about what it costs to walk back to a table and say, I made a judgment before I asked a question, and I should have asked first, not as a confession that protects you from further consequence, as a statement that names the thing precisely without softening it, and then stops. That is what Olivier did. I don't know if I would have. The apology that serves you and the apology that simply names the truth are not always the same apology, and in the moment, the difference is not always obvious. He found the right one. That is worth something. This story is fictional, inspired by Keanu Reeves' well-known reputation for the patience of a person who has nothing to prove, and the grace of someone who understands that proving it would miss the point. If something in this one stayed with you, drop a comment and tell me what you took from it. Share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Subscribe if you want to be here for the next one. See you in the next one.